I was working at a luxury geothermal spa in Iceland when a guest from Texas stormed the front desk. He demanded a full refund because the water smelled like rotten eggs and insisted it was a sulfur leak. I explained it's natural volcanic heating, but he yelled, "My geologist friend said this is a sign of a failing infrastructure." He then tried to purify the lagoon by dumping a gallon of bottled spring water into it. My brother manages a boutique hotel in Tokyo where an American traveler grew furious because there were no trash cans on the street. He cornered my brother, claiming, "In Seattle, we have bins every 10 feet for a reason." When told it's about personal responsibility, he argued that Japanese minimalism was just a clever government ploy to save on plastic bags. He ended up stuffing his Starbucks cup into a decorative stone lantern. I'm a concierge in Munich and had to handle a guest who was livid about the Sunday Ruheziat or quiet hours. He started vacuuming his balcony at noon, claiming, "Efficiency is the American way, and I'm optimizing my vacation time." When I mentioned the local ordinance, he scoffed, "Germany is a productivity leader. These laws are clearly just suggestions for the lazy." He then threatened to sue the city for impeding his liberty. My sister works at a cafe in Florence and met a man who ordered a cappuccino at 4 in the afternoon. When she mentioned locals only drink them in the morning, he hit the table and shouted, "Milk has no curfew in a free market." He claimed a Harvard study proved caffeine and dairy synergy is highest post-lunch. He then insisted on adding a slice of cheddar cheese to his saucer to balance the acidity. My brother owns a bistro in Paris where a tourist from Ohio was offended because the bread arrived without a side of butter. He told my brother, "Bread is a delivery vehicle for fat, and you're giving me a dry ride." My brother explained it's for cleaning the sauce, but the man insisted, "Napoleonic code requires fats with grains." He eventually pulled a stick of margarine from his cargo shorts and began spreading it with a credit card. My cousin was hosting a traditional birthday circle in the Netherlands when his American roommate barged in and tried to disrupt the seating. The American said, "Sitting in a circle and congratulating everyone is a collectivist trap." When told it's the custom, he argued that his life coach in Aspen taught him that alpha energy requires standing in the center. He spent the entire party pacing in the middle of the room, high-fiving confused Dutch grandmothers. I'm a security guard at a Singaporean transit hub and caught a traveler trying to hide a pack of gum in his shoe. He whispered, "I know the secret laws. This is actually legal if you're using it for jaw therapy." When I pointed out the ban, he claimed, "The UN Charter protects the right to chew for stress management." He then tried to convince me that the gum was actually a soft tissue massager for his molars. My uncle manages a temple in Bangkok and had to stop a man from ruffling a monk's hair for a photo. The tourist laughed, "I'm just sharing some positive vibes, man." When my uncle explained the head is the most sacred part of the body, the man argued, "In the Silicon Valley mindset, the head is just a hardware casing for the brain." He then offered the monk a baseball cap to protect his crown chakra. I was working at a Swiss apartment complex when a tenant from Chicago tried to do laundry on a Sunday. I told him it's a day of rest and strictly forbidden by the building's code. He snapped, "My laundry doesn't believe in the Sabbath." He claimed that global commerce never sleeps, so his socks shouldn't either. He ended up trying to hand wash his jeans in the decorative lobby fountain to bypass the bureaucracy. My brother is a surf instructor in Brazil and watched a student give a thumbs up to a boat captain. The captain looked offended, as it can be vulgar there, but the American insisted. Social media proved this is the universal sign for awesome. When corrected, he argued that digital linguistics overrules local slang. He then spent an hour trying to explain engagement metrics to a man who just wanted him to sit down. I'm a server in New Delhi and watched a guest insist on using his left hand to pass food to a local family. When I whispered that the left hand is considered unclean for eating, he grew defensive. "I'm a lefty and the Americans with Disabilities Act protects my dominant side," he declared. He then argued that the ancient energy meridians in his left palm actually made the non more nutritious for everyone involved. My cousin works at a corporate office in Seoul and saw an American intern hand his business card with one hand. When the manager looked displeased, the intern said, "One-handed delivery shows I'm a fast-paced closer." He argued that using two hands was a legacy system that slowed down the economy. To prove his point, he started throwing his cards like frisbees across the boardroom to maximize his networking reach and save everyone time. I'm a transit officer in London and watched a traveler try to jump a massive bus queue by claiming "first come, first served" is a suggestion. When the crowd groaned, he turned and yelled, "In Florida, we use the boldness wins strategy." He argued that queuing was a relic of the monarchy that Americans defeated in 1776. He then tried to auction his spot in line to the highest bidder, claiming he was marketizing the commute. My brother lives in Copenhagen and saw a tourist trying to rescue a baby sleeping in a stroller outside a cafe. The local mom was inside, but the American screamed, "This is child abandonment in all 50 states." When told it's perfectly safe and common, he argued that ambient air toxins were a secret Danish conspiracy. He then tried to wheel the stroller into the kitchen to decontaminate the infant before the authorities arrived. I work at a library in Oslo where an American student was shouting into his phone during silent hour. When I asked him to lower his voice, he said, "My constitutional right to free speech doesn't have a volume limit." He argued that Norway's janteloven philosophy was just a way to suppress vocal entrepreneurs. He then put his phone on speaker to democratize the conversation for the entire room, insisting that everyone could benefit from his marketing plan. My uncle runs a taco stand in Oaxaca, where a tourist insisted the extra hot salsa was actually a mild tomato sauce. After one bite, he turned bright red and gasped, "You've weaponized this produce." My uncle offered him milk, but the man pushed it away, claiming, "In Texas, we build a tolerance to chemical weapons in our sleep." He then tried to pour a bottle of tequila on his tongue to neutralize the pH balance. I'm a host in Cairo and had to deal with a traveler who felt insulted when I refilled his tea a third time. He stood up and said, "You're clearly trying to bloat me so I can't leave the restaurant." I explained its hospitality, but he argued that excessive hydration is a tactic used by desert nomads to slow down tourists. He then insisted on paying a fluid tax to stop me from pouring more tea. My brother is a waiter in Madrid and had a couple arrive for dinner at 6 p.m. When he told them the kitchen opens at 9, the husband yelled, "Metabolism doesn't wait for the sun to go down." He claimed that early bird specials are a human right recognized by the Geneva Convention. He then sat on the sidewalk with a bag of pretzels, telling passers-by that the restaurant was staging a hunger strike against its patrons. My cousin manages a dim sum palace in Hong Kong where an American guest was offended that his plate was cleared before he finished. The guest shouted, "I paid for every grain of rice on this porcelain." When told it's to make room for more food, he argued that plate possession is 9/10 of the law. He then clutched his empty bowl and told the waiter that inventory management was his specialty back in Ohio. I was working at a seafood place in Lisbon when a guest threw a tantrum over the covert charge for bread and olive. He pointed at the menu and said, "Unsolicited appetizers are a violation of the Fair Credit Reporting Act." I explained its standard practice, but he insisted, "I'm a high-level negotiator, and this is a classic bait and switch." He then tried to return the half-eaten olives to the kitchen for a full refund and store credit. My brother works at the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul and saw a man trying to haggle the price of a fixed-price bottle of water. The American shouted, "I saw a documentary that said everything in the Orient is a negotiation." My brother pointed to the digital register, but the man argued that digital prices are just a baseline for the week. He eventually offered to trade his damp socks for the water, claiming they were vintage athletic wear. I'm a chef in Cusco and had an American guest send back a plate of kiwi because it looked too much like his daughter's pet. He yelled, "Serving a hamster is a psychological war crime." I explained it's a local delicacy, but he argued that international pet protection laws forbade the consumption of anything with whiskers. He then demanded we serve him a standard American rodent like a squirrel instead, because that felt more outdoorsy and less domestic. My sister is a waitress in Athens and had to explain why customers shouldn't flush toilet paper down the drain. The American guest laughed and said, "Your plumbing is just shy, it needs a pep talk from a real plumber." When told the pipes are too narrow, he argued that hydraulic pressure is a universal constant and his pipes back home never complained. He ended up trying to re-engineer the bathroom with a rolled-up magazine and some dental floss. My brother is a gaucho in Argentina and served a man who didn't know the hand signal for, "I'm finished," with his meat. The guest kept eating until he was visible sweating, then cried out, "You're force-feeding me like a goose for foie gras." My brother pointed to the signal card, but the man argued that non-verbal cues are a trap for the unwary. He then insisted on wearing his napkin as a blindfold to signal his gastric surrender. My cousin works at a faux shop in Hanoi and had a guest complain about the aggressive slurping from the next table. The American said, "Decibel levels at the dinner table are a sign of a failing civilization." When my cousin explained it shows the chef you enjoy the meal, the man argued, "Real compliments are delivered via Yelp, not saliva." He then pulled out a pair of noise-canceling headphones and began eating his soup in vocal protest. I'm a driving instructor in Queensland and had an American student try to enter a roundabout clockwise. When I grabbed the wheel, he yelled, "The clockwise motion represents the natural flow of the universe." I told him it's the law, but he argued that Coriolis force is a myth invented by the British to confuse colonies. He then tried to convince me that right-hand turns are inherently more democratic, and insisted on driving over the central grass island. My brother is a conductor in Prague and caught a tourist with an unvalidated tram ticket. The man said, "I paid for the paper, so the machine is just a redundant middleman." When my brother explained the fine, the man argued that paying for the potential of travel was enough under maritime law. He then tried to validate the ticket by signing it with his own pen, claiming his signature carried more legal weight than a timestamp. I'm a guide on a matatu in Nairobi and had a guest refuse to let a 10th person sit in the row. He shouted, "Occupancy limits are determined by the manufacturer, not by how many people can squeeze in." I told him there's always room for one more, but he argued that personal space bubbles are protected by the UN. He then tried to tape off his seat with "Do Not Cross" yellow ribbon he brought from his hotel room. My father works at a metro station in Budapest and saw a man trying to walk down an up escalator to save time. When my father stopped him, the man puffed out his chest and said, "I'm a disruptor, and your linear movement is stifling my innovation." He argued that gravitational momentum made his descent more energy efficient for the city. He eventually tripped and blamed the communist-era friction of the stairs for his lack of balance. My sister is a barista in Stockholm and had a guest complain that fika was a waste of corporate productivity. He told her, "Coffee is a fuel, not a social contract." When she explained the cultural importance of the break, he argued that micro-rests are a symptom of a low-growth economy. He then insisted on drinking his espresso while running in place to maintain his metabolic rate and prove he was beating the Swedish system. My brother is a mall guard in Dubai and had to stop a couple from kissing near the fountain. The husband yelled, "Affection is a global currency, and we're just making a deposit." My brother explained the local modesty laws, but the man argued that love is a diplomat with full immunity. He then tried to show my brother his wedding certificate on his phone, claiming it was a permit for public displays of romantic excellence. I'm a bartender in rural Ireland and had a man get angry because I told him his lost luggage was grand. He shouted, "My life is in those bags, and you're telling me it's wonderful that they're gone." I explained that grand just means okay here, but he argued that linguistic inflation was a sign of a deceptive culture. He then insisted on a written apology in standardized English, to ensure there was no hidden Celtic sarcasm. My cousin is a tour guide in Manila and saw a tourist get confused when a local pointed with their lip. The American laughed and said, "Are you trying to blow me a kiss, or is there a fly on your face?" When told it's a common gesture, he argued that pointing is a finger-based activity by biological design. He then tried to correct the guide by taping a chopstick to the guide's hand to restore anatomical accuracy. I'm a doorman in Krakow and watched a guest refuse to shake hands over the threshold of the door. He shouted, "In Chicago, we shake hands wherever we damn well please." I told him it brings bad luck here, but he argued that superstition is a tax on the uneducated. To prove his point, he stood directly on the line and tried to initiate a power handshake while reciting the American Bill of Rights to ward off the ghosts. My brother is a driver in Bali and had a passenger get livid because we were 10 minutes late due to rubber time. The American tapped his watch and said, "Linear time is the backbone of the Western world." My brother explained that life flows differently here, but the man argued that time is a commodity that you are currently stealing from my portfolio. He then tried to invoice my brother for the 10 minutes based on his hourly consulting rate. My brother works at a lakeside sauna in Finland and saw an American guest try to enter wearing a full wetsuit. The guest yelled, "Nudity is a security risk and a violation of my personal privacy policy." When my brother mentioned it's for hygiene, the man argued that neoprene is the ultimate barrier against foreign bacteria. He then tried to negotiate a towel border, where he could remain fully clothed while everyone else followed the rules of the sauna. I'm a guide in a Marrakesh bazaar and had a guest get offended when he was asked to wash his hands before a communal meal. He said, "I use sanitizer, so your water ritual is just a redundant performance." I explained it's about respect, but he argued that alcohol-based gels are the only true path to purity in a developing nation. He then insisted on wearing latex gloves to eat his tagine, claiming he was protecting the locals from his superior gut biome. My sister is a teacher in Bhutan and had to stop a tourist from trying to buy cigarettes on the street. The man argued, the gross national happiness index should include the right to a nicotine buzz. When told the sale of tobacco is banned, he claimed that maritime smuggling laws allowed him to possess anything he bought on a plane. He then tried to trade a rare American penny for a single puff of a local's hand-rolled leaf. I'm a waiter in Brussels and had a guest scream because his beer was served in a funny-shaped glass. He told me, "A pint is a pint, and you're using geometry to trick me out of 2 ounces." I explained that each beer has its specific glassware for flavor, but he argued that glassware elitism is a barrier to trade. He then poured his expensive Trappist ale into a plastic water bottle to standardize the volume and eliminate the pretension. My uncle is a driver in Salzburg and had a passenger get angry because the hills didn't actually have the sound of music. The man shouted, "I paid for a cinematic experience, and all I hear is cowbells and wind." When my uncle said the movie isn't a documentary, the man argued that cultural branding is a contract with the consumer. He then pulled out a Bluetooth speaker and blasted the soundtrack at full volume to correct the local atmosphere for everyone. Traveling the world is a beautiful journey, but it requires more than just a passport. It requires a willingness to listen. These stories remind us that while our own norms feel like universal truths, they are often just one way of living. When we step outside our borders, we have the chance to grow by embracing the beautiful, confusing, and hilarious differences that make our world so rich. Would you like me to create a part 2 featuring stories from Australia, Brazil, and Egypt?